Everyone. Hi, Icons. Today, it's a podcast number 3 of Icon series. We have a guest speaker, Omar Shaya, who is the founder of MultiOn. Omar, do you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, hi everybody. Great to be with you here. So as you mentioned, I'm the founder of MultiOn. Before that, I was at Stanford Business School, where we started the company with my co-founder, who was doing his PhD there uh, at the computer science department. Before Stanford, I was a product manager at the personalization team at Meta, working mostly on ranking and personalization algorithms for Instagram. And before that, I worked on the Copilot team at Microsoft.
All right, that's amazing. And do you mind sharing where did you meet your co-founder?
Well, the first time I met Dave, my co-founder, was at an SB Icons dinner. It was the dinner with the CEO of TaskRabbit, and we were actually interested in this dinner because TaskRabbit is kind of the human agent or the human assistant, where you can on demand order and have them do something for you. And this was in line with the idea that I was pursuing, which is building this AI assistant. So I was very curious to learn more about TaskRabbit and get some inspiration, and ended up meeting my future co-founder. So thank you guys for making this happen.
And it was right in my car. So I remember this chemistry that was happening between Dave and Omar. It started in my car. So now I can be really proud of.
So the lesson of the podcast is if you want to start a company and you're looking for a co-founder, come to an Icons event and you'll be successful.
Absolutely, I can vouch for that.
Okay, so Brandon, do you want to kick it off with the questions about AI wearables, and then maybe Omar, you can share, the Multion story, right, and what you're doing right now. What do you see the trends for AI agent and assistants? So, and then we can gradually convert this conversation into AI wearables that we wanted to cover.
Sure. Like some context, as I mentioned, I studied computer science in Germany, worked at Microsoft on the Copilot team. It used to be called the AI assistant team, and was inspired by this kind of work, which is getting AI to do things for us. So beyond just text generation or image generation or predictions, how can we delegate tasks fully to AI so that we can just focus as humans, as people, on doing what we really care about and delegate everything else to AI? And another inspiration for that was that if you look at all Fortune 500 CEOs, what you see that they all have in common is that they all have a personal assistant or an executive assistant. And so how come that they figured out that this is what they really need for their job, but the rest of the population does not have access to this? And so that was another inspiration why I wanted to pursue this idea. And working on personalization was another like building block, because you want an assistant to be personalized to you. You want the agent to be personalized to you and really understand your needs specifically and how they differ from someone else's needs, even for the same task. And so all these building blocks came together to start MultiOn. And today, MultiOn, we build this AI agent that can complete tasks on the web autonomously. So it can interact with any website autonomously. All you have to do is just tell it what you want. Tell it the task, like book me a flight, make a restaurant reservation, schedule this meeting on my calendar. All these things can be done autonomously with our agent. And our agent can be used by developers through an API. We call it the Agent API. And I think this also is related to AI wearables and AI devices, because that's how many companies are going to use our agent API. And so if they build the hardware and the operating system, we give them this agent capability that allows them to complete tasks autonomously. So these devices and wearables will become much more useful. And you can do all these tasks that I just described using our API.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it seems that your idea was very, at least in Silicon Valley, we have this narrative of going after like wedge niche markets, and then making it more accessible and broad, and adding complementary features that target new markets. but you immediately went after very broad horizontal market, right? Can you describe how you thought about it, and weren't you afraid of going after it while any like more capitalized company can actually go after? And I don't remember the name of the company, guys. Maybe you can remind me. That raised over a billion, and they're doing like by Google X engineer, and they're doing these avatars basically. It's like similar idea, but more horizontal. What's the name?
I'm
Was
not
it
sure.
humane?
Which one?
Humane?
No, no.
You're
Humane is,
referring to Adept, the AI or Imbue, maybe?
yeah, I think maybe Adept was the name. So yeah, I think that's basically the question of like vertical versus horizontal.
Yeah, it's a good question. So there are a few points here. One of the points is like when I wanted to start a company, I wanted to do the thing that I really wanted to do, not the thing that the market dictated. And so I was very intrinsically driven rather than looking at a market or some research to figure out what kind of company I want to build. There was another like quote that I heard from the founder of Masterclass, who's also a Stanford GSB grad, and he said, go after the idea that even if it fails, you won't regret going after it. And that's why he went after Masterclass, because he said, like, what's better than just meeting all these incredible people and learning from them? And so he was like, even if that fails, I would be happy that I have gone through this experience. And so similarly, the like going after what you might call an ambitious vision or a hard problem was actually a motivating factor for me. I wanted to go after the idea that I really wanted to pursue and I was really passionate about. But obviously, we are very pragmatic. We are very realistic. I had this experience working on Copilot, so it's not that I'm just like landed and decided to do this. Like I've done this before, years before this whole AI agent space became popular as it is today. I worked on personalization, which is another key building block for a personal agent. My co-founder worked on autonomous systems and self-driving cars. So it's not that we just landed on this. Like we've been, pursuing the space throughout our careers. And so we also have this advantage, this technical advantage and experience that perhaps very few people have. And so we have advantages over big companies, and our laser focus on this problem, which is AI that can take actions autonomously, interact with other systems on the web, will also give us an advantage versus big companies that are in a way distracted by so many other products and businesses that they already have. And so I think these things will give us an advantage. And as far as we know so far, we have the best agent in this category by far, compared to any other player in the market.
What are the core problems you're trying to solve now? I remember when we last talked, you talked about minimizing cost, but also I've heard that multi-step functionality with agents is a bit challenging. They often get confused and don't complete the tasks. So curious, like where you're spending most of your time, what technical roadblocks do you see to getting to something that's more autonomous and can really do, like deep work, multi-hundred steps, complex tasks that involve real reasoning? Like, how do we get there?
Yeah, we already demonstrated our ability to complete what you would consider complex tasks, starting from the kind of tasks that you would usually delegate to an actual human assistant. And so there is a certain level of like intellectual complexity that you probably would not delegate to others, or you would only delegate to specialists, but not to your assistant. So most of the work you would delegate to an assistant would be mostly like admin related work, booking flights, hotels, restaurants, shopping for gifts or for yourself, scheduling and coordinating meetings with others. And so these are the kind of tasks we also decided to start with. We are like, if we can give an assistant, and just to be clear, not replace human assistants, just give an assistant to everyone who doesn't have one. That's kind of our starting point. And that's what we are getting really good at. Now, the few challenges you mentioned, like first, latency, second, cost, third is having a system that can do much, much more complex tasks. And by complex, we mean the number of steps it takes, the number of actions it takes to complete that task. And so all these three problems we're working on in parallel. So today we could book a flight. We could even do some complex tasks across applications like checking your calendar for your next appointment and then ordering an Uber to that appointment. So we already are there. We already do really well there. But there is always more complex, longer step tasks. For example, coordinating a meeting with 10 people and going back and forth with them until you figure out the right time. That's something we cannot do reliably yet, but we're getting closer. And so we're constantly evolving. And that's, with model training, new data sets, new architectures, because our system is not just a model, it's a complex system of multiple components that are working together and that are orchestrated through our complex orchestration system that make this happen.
How many people do you guys have actually using the agent on a regular basis to do these type of things? Can you provide any color? Are we talking 100, 500, 1,000? How many people are actually MultiOn?
So I can give you a scale. To be clear, our first product is the Agent API, our first public product, and that is mostly focused on developers. So developers, let's say a wearable company that has an AI device can call our API so that you can use that device to make a restaurant reservation or order an Uber or order your dinner from DoorDash or things like that. And so that is our first public product. And there, we have a very strong reception. We only released this less than a month ago. We've seen strong reception from developers. We're also working on some large-scale partnerships with big companies that already produce millions of devices. And then we have our more or less internal product, which is still in private beta, and it's used by tens of thousands of people. And it's mostly used for us to learn more about how people like to use this, what kind of data do we need to keep improving this, also to collect the right data for our systems to keep improving. And so that is still a private beta product that we do not intend to launch. It's more for us to keep learning and improving. So for now, our only public product is the Agent API.
Got it. And I guess you mentioned wearables. It'd be really curious to hear your thoughts on the AI wearable space. We have the Meta Ray-Bans, which for context, these are these Ray-Ban glasses that Meta and Ray-Ban partner together. You wear the glasses can see the world around you. They also have an AI integration, so you can basically talk to ChatGPT and ask questions. And then we also have the human AI pin, which is basically the same thing as Meta, but it's just through a pin. And then the Rabbit R1, which is this handheld device that also is similar functionality, but just a different form factor. So curious, do you think, which of those are you most bullish on, if any? How do you think Apple fits into this? Is a wearable even necessary? Yeah, it'd be great to hear your thoughts on that.
Yeah. So let me start by talking about the market and what I'm seeing. So the devices you mentioned, the Humane AI pin, the Meta Ray-Bans. I've seen the Meta Ray-Bans, and they are probably the only product that I heard positive reviews on. And it's not because of AI. It's mostly from parents who want to record their kids, but they want to stay in the moment. And so when they are with their kids, if they take their phone on and start filming, it kind of disrupts the moment. But with the Ray-Bans, they can just start recording, but stay in the moment, engage with their kids. And this is kind of the killer use case, apparently, for the Meta Ray-Bans. So you'll notice that parents are big fans of this product.
Interesting. Not the AI.
Yeah, it's still too early to understand what role the AI will play in this product. There are definitely many opportunities there, but this is so far the feedback I've heard from these users. Obviously, we've heard some of the reviews on the AI pin. They still need to do a lot of work to make it a more useful product, especially around latency. So these are also the reviews we've heard. I haven't tried them myself yet. But I can see huge opportunity for new AI devices and form factors, because there are many things that you can do without needing to look at a screen, or without needing to use your phone to tap on a few things and so on. Especially with agents like ours that can now complete full tasks for you autonomously. All you have to do is say what you want it to do, like make a restaurant reservation at this restaurant. You don't need to look at any screens. You don't need to click on any buttons. And so this opens the opportunity for new form factors that are much simpler, maybe less distracting to us, and I'm sure they will enhance the quality of our lives. So I'm really excited about this space. And obviously, Apple is always best positioned to do something. I mean, they are not usually not the first to do something, but usually when they do something, they do probably one of the best versions of that. And so I'm excited to see what they end up doing in this space.
Yeah, maybe Apple could integrate MultiOn. Or I guess I know Amazon is an investor in you guys, so maybe Alexa or another thing. But it feels like, yeah, Apple has the distribution, they have the users. So if they could integrate something like this, it would be interesting. I guess, yeah, last question for me is, if you had to bet on which form factor is going to be best, like is it the pin? Is it the watch? Is it, I don't know, your earbuds, glasses? Like which would you bet on?
I think the watch is the most natural wearable. You don't want to create new habits for people. So if you want to just latch into existing habits, I think the watch is the most likely wearable to succeed. It still has a small screen, so you can even still see some visuals there. And at the same time, you can use it as a voice input device. I think the main limiting factor in watches is the lack of camera. And so sometimes you might need a camera to look at something, but that's also, I think, feasible. For example, the Apple Watch Ultra is relatively large, and I think it could fit a camera at some point. And so I think, I would predict the watch to be the most likely device. Glasses, not everybody wears glasses, and so I think it's maybe the second most likely, but it would force many people who do not wear glasses to do so. So that's why it's a bit less likely than watches.
Very interesting. Nice.
Yeah. So, Omar, how do you handle privacy? Because for example, I tried your product. I was one of your demo first users,
Thank you.
and one of the concerns that I had was, okay, now they see all my banking information and all my data. How can I make sure they don't use it in a detrimental ways? So how did you figure out, how like first, how do you handle it, and how do you make sure that users trust sharing your data?
Yeah, obviously, this is a very important topic that we take very seriously. And so when you use our product, as I said, first, the only product that's public today is the agent API, and developers have a lot of control over the data and what happens to the data. But overall, for us, we do a lot of work, like pre-processing, to strip away any private data that we do not need to complete the task. And even after that, we strip even more data away that we do not need to improve the system. So what we really need is like figuring out, okay, which button to click on, what sequence of actions we need to take. We don't really need like the credit card information or the banking information or the credentials. And so none of that is stored today. We try to just remove about every information. And that's good for us as a business also, because we don't want to overstore data that we do not need or that could become a liability in the future.
But so, are there any guarantees? Like, what are the guarantees that users receive that you strip this data away?
It's part of our pre-processing steps. So we have a whole pre-processing system. We have something called the representation models. The representation models, as you ask for something, and as we go to the whatever web interface we're interacting with, this representation model, first of all, strips all this data away, only takes the actionable elements on this page. And then even these actionable elements are not kept as a human readable text. It's converted into a special AI embedding that it's only machine readable. And so humans cannot even read that or understand what that is. And so these are some of the steps that I can talk about that assure there is data privacy.
Okay, sounds good. Um, all right, I think we can. I said if you don't have any other questions to Omar, we can gradually move to Andrej Karpathy and the dinner we have. Omar, would appreciate also your opinion on the topics we discussed because you are subject matter expert here. But we can start with major takeaways. So one takeaway for each. My major takeaway, which was sensational, was about Sora. That the comment that Sora can actually lead to a lot of negative impact because you can show the video that people want to see, right? And then you don't have the choice, right? You're seeing something that is kind of shocking, and it can work as hypnosis for everyone. So, and it seems like a very good use case for every bad actor.
It feels like an amazing use case for financial fraud, right? The CFO calls, he wants to have a meeting, generates a video, a Zoom meeting, talk to him on video, asks you to wire the money, and then you wire the money, and you realize a day later it wasn't the CFO.
Yeah.
I think it goes back to what Georgi you said that I think the companies like TikTok and Instagram, they'll create more sticky content in a sense that people will just be glued to the screen because by reading your face expression, I think the video will be able to adapt what you like and what you want to see, and pretty much it will give you like this constant um, bring a video which you just will want to watch until the end, and it just will generate a new one, a new one, a new one, and so on.
Omar, what do you think?
Yeah, on Sora specifically, like to take just a different aspect of the product here. Obviously, it's not launched, so it's just based on what we saw and what we think it's going to be. I think it's going to empower so many people to create new, interesting content. Today, or before Gen AI, it used to be really hard to create even 1 minute worth of video. I know that because, when I was a kid, I used to really enjoy creating 3D animation. I was, as a kid, like many kids, I loved Pixar movies, and I taught myself how to create 3D animation with different software tools. And it would take literally months to create 1-2 minutes of video that with full scenes and characters and all that. And imagine now with Sora, you can create that in a matter of minutes. And so I can only imagine the amount of new content that this will enable and create. And remember, storytelling is such a powerful tool. If you want to communicate an idea, whether it's for your product or for your cause or for your principles or whatever it is, I think the ability to communicate that through visuals and video is going to be really powerful. And I'm really excited about that aspect of Sora. Of course, I agree with all the potential negative aspects that you described.
Yeah, I think overwhelmingly it will absolutely be positive. I mean, we have to be aware of and try to mitigate the negative risks, and that will also create new opportunities for businesses. Like, can we do like a proof of humanity where you can actually know if the video you're talking to is actually a human? But yeah, to your point about creativity, like AI generated TV shows and movies. That, like, imagine that. It's like you say, hey, I love Game of Thrones, but now I want to watch Game of Thrones with like me as being one of the characters, or like I want to watch Game of Thrones in like a sci-fi scene with these alterations, and the TV show just gets generated. So it's going to allow the tremendous personalization of content.
I'm sure many people would want to change the ending as well.
Definitely.
I think to me what I kind of resonated, and that Andre didn't give like a clear answer to that, that right now, as we speak, I think we're all privileged because we speak English, but there are like AI is right now predominantly what in English, maybe Mandarin, maybe Spanish, maybe some other like a bigger languages. But let's say, what about some other smaller languages like that doesn't have that well of representation? So, Umar, I know you have some Middle Eastern roots, right? So there are some like dialects, like I think Arabs are trying to develop their own like a AI model, like large language model. But what happens to like a smaller languages which are not like well represented in the AI data set? So I think that was my question is that, okay, what happens to those uh, countries, which are not well represented? And if you ask OpenAI a question in any language rather than any of the bigger languages, I think most of the time the answer will be rubbish, right? So kind of I'm curious to see what would should be the approach there.
Yeah, it's a big concern. I think Andre mentioned a potential business model could be countries actually paying OpenAI to include training data in their language. Like a small country could pay OpenAI to do that, and that could actually be a way for OpenAI to make extra money. But there's obviously ethical concerns there.
So pretty much,
I
I think
think
that language and the language is one of the kind of one of those things that makes a country unique and distinct in some way. It's like army. It's like having your national bank and having your own language. So let's say if a private company and all of a sudden you give all the information, they have access and they can, pretty much like restrict access. Let's say like with the what happened with Russia, and let's say like, okay, now we're not allowing any Russian content, whatever, or Chinese content, then this becomes a major problem, right?
Brendan, what was your takeaway number one?
I would say an area that I've been interested in is like self-driving cars and like who's going to win. Is it going to be Tesla? Is it going to be Waymo? And Andre worked a lot in that area and knew a lot. And his view was that Tesla was going to win that race. He talked about a couple different things. Um, the their FSD I think 12.3 or 12.4, the most recent version. I think he said he drove all the way from his house to the dinner and didn't have to do any interventions. And that now they, with the latest version, they're using this neural network as opposed to sort of a classic rules-based AI system. And that's been incredible in terms of driving down the number of interventions that a driver needs to do when they're driving. An intervention mean like grabbing the steering wheel, and that it's working incredibly well. And Tesla has this massive data advantage because they have millions of cars already on the road, which Waymo doesn't have. So I think that was a takeaway for me that the self driving technology is really here, and Tesla is going to likely win, at least according to Andre's view.
Yeah, a couple of hot takes that I had was actually how tremendous progress is attributed to NVIDIA and how everyone else was doing like something wrong, but NVIDIA was always doing everything right, like, improving capabilities of GPUs, right? And then, I think my takeaway was that the models that ChatGPT and everyone is using are mostly based on models on 1970s, right? And then, with transformers, they were improved, but not tremendously. But what actually enabled this revolution that we have now is outstanding GPUs provided by NVIDIA. So it was, it was kind of mind blowing takeaway that I didn't expect to hear.
And I think we briefly also mentioned that right now, I think the biggest winner in this AI race or revolution have been the chip manufacturing companies, like specifically Nvidia. So I think eventually this will move up the chain, and we'll go get into more like infrastructure players than like software players, and so on and so on.
Hmm. Okay, the last part, Brendan, do you want to share the major takeaways from Tom Stair? And then we
Sure.
can.
Yeah, so we had a cool opportunity this past Monday to meet Tom Steyer. He's a Stanford graduate, was also on the board of trustees, and then he actually ran for president in 2020. And he was the founder of Farallon Capital, which is a hedge fund that has been incredibly successful. Some of the takeaways we had were, one of the questions we asked him, how does he spend his time today? So now what he's doing is he's investing in businesses that will help solve the climate crisis. he has this unique firm called Galvanize. Basically, what they do is they invest across all asset classes. So from venture bets and startups to buying buildings and then trying to reduce emissions and improve profit margins. So he's doing everything from real estate to VC. And also doing debt and equities. Very versatile firm. It was interesting to learn about that approach. His view is that the best way to solve the climate crisis is business, and it's not philanthropy or government. By his estimates, we need between $4 to $8 trillion spent annually to solve the climate crisis, and you just obviously can't get that much from philanthropy, and you can't get that much from government. And the only way to actually scale the solution to the problem is through profits. And so that's what he's dedicating his life towards now. Another takeaway that he had a huge shift where he'd run this very successful multi-billion-dollar hedge fund for dozens of years, and then he decided to leave and focus all his time on climate. And so it's a huge pivot in somebody's career. And he said what motivated him to do that was conversations with his wife. He actually went to Alaska with his family and saw how they'd gone maybe a couple decades before, and when he went this time, all the glaciers were melted, and that was like one of the reasons that he moved to climate. And a question he sort of said was, which is he had talked to with his wife Kat Taylor, who was also at the dinner, and super interesting to meet her too, was does he want the measure of his life to just be a number, or can it be more than that? And so that promoted a takeaway for me that I thought of as like, we should make like whatever you want in life, you should make sure that what your goals, your current activities are trying to achieve that goal. Like if you want your life to be measured by a number, then you should be doing things to achieve that goal. But make sure you know what you want your life to be measured by, and then make sure you follow that strategy. And there's no disjunction there.
Yeah, it's interesting. Ethical points that whatever you're doing, you will be way more successful than you expect to be. So make sure you are doing everything ethically, without doing any wrong, like without making any wrong bets. And it was interesting takeaway for me, because in emerging markets you don't have this approach, right? You mostly think about doing as much as possible, even, and you see a lot of people are also pursuing in a very non-ethical their opportunities and earning money, right, achieving success in a non-ethical way. um, but maybe there's it's a luxury of Silicon Valley, um, that cannot really be attributed to the rest of the world, but I'm not sure. um, cool. Yeah, thanks Omar for coming and being guest speaker
Thanks so
for
much.
us. Yeah, this week we
Thank you,
hosted
guys.
Andrej Karpathy, like chief researcher at OpenAI and Tesla. He left the company, like both companies actually, and now he's traveling, learning, and deciding what's next for him. And Tom Steyer, who was founder of Farallon, and president candidate of 2020, as I remember. Yeah, thanks everyone. We continue hosting and sharing learnings with the audience and bringing interesting speakers as Omar.
Thank you, guys. Great to be with you.
See
Thank you.
you.
Bye bye. Bye bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.